Hello, Dunamis.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us online tonight.
Thank you, thank you.
Really, really good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So I'm just going to say a word of prayer and then we're going to
Okay,
go. Father, in the name of
beautiful.
Jesus, tonight,
Amen.
praise. We
Mm,
ask for your wisdom tonight as we discuss
Amen.
uh, solutions to issues that people might be going through. We pray,
Amen.
bring healing through these words of wisdom. You bring direction,
Amen.
encouragement, and hope in the lives of the people that need it. In Jesus' mighty name. We pray for your healing power, especially in the
Yes, Lord.
relation marriage.
Yes, Lord.
Oh Lord, that you will take all the glory. In
Amen.
Jesus' mighty name, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
All
Praise God.
right. Once again, thanks for joining us. So excited to have you around here.
Mm.
And thank
Thanks for
God
having me.
for technology that I can start from wherever I am.
Mm.
Uh, you will have no choice but to answer. Praise God. All right. We're talking about we're running a series on how we met our wives, and
Mm.
we're trying to see from our experiences how we can communicate wisdom
Okay.
generations and to people who are at that season of their lives,
Mm.
particularly COVID-19 period where everybody's just at home, churches are not
Mm.
meeting. So we find a lot of pastors are very innovative right now, getting online. And,
Mm.
even pastors that don't believe on Facebook, they and everybody's online. So we thank God for what God is achieving through technology.
Amen.
So we're just going to start right away. We want you to tell us, first of all, how you met your wife. Tell us the
Mm.
drama. We want to know the drama behind.
Okay, thank you, Pastor Dunamis. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me on this platform. Um, okay, I was thinking, okay, should we keep the short version or the long version? And then you said you want all the drama. So,
Uh,
here it is. We first met at a camp meeting,
okay.
um, and that year, I remember we were in a seminar room together, um, but we didn't quite interact much.
Okay.
But I took note of the face. She was with a friend. I took note of the face, and I think as we were leaving the camp, we exchanged contacts. And in those days, our contacts were house address and PO box. There was no phone. There was no whatever. It was, it was full blown analog. So
Yeah.
about 3 years after that, we met at the same camp meeting. Now
Okay.
this time around, it was interesting. Uh, I happened to have malaria. Okay. Um, those were those days when I was still mastering the basics of divine healing. So, but I felt it was of God, because what happened was that one day I was trying to walk from the dining area, no, from the hostel through the dining area to the hall where the meeting was holding. And it was difficult because I was running very high temperature. I was shivering. I was in a lot of pain. And she happened to be coming out of their own hostel also, and then just, came and another lady, and they just helped me.
Wow.
And then they sat me at the dining. The dining is midway between the hostels and the meeting hall. They
Yeah.
sat me there, when they went to get the camp doctor and all that, and they took amazing care of me. But I took notes that this lady was very tender. I mean, she was just present, you know. So I took an extra note, and then that same year we began to see on campus, you know. So we meet as we're going to lecture, you know, and I'll just say hi, you know, and that was it. I mean, there wasn't much. She was just a good friend, and I did not forget the good that had been done to me, you know. I had made a strong mental note of it. So at some point, we had this very long ASU strike, but before we were, at some point we had to leave campus, but before we had to leave campus, we'll still go to the lecture theater to read and all of that. And I started finding her in a certain lecture theater, so we'll exchange, you know, we'll converse, you know, we'll banter and all of that. And I started getting to be like, yeah, this is a nice girl, you know, she was very cerebral, you know, she was in medical school. No, she was in pre-med then. She was doing dentistry, preclinicals they call it, preclinicals, you know. So I was like, yeah, very smart girl and all of that. You know, we just have this talk, whatever. But I was nothing, you know. A few years later, this was about a year or two later, I started thinking in my heart, it is now time to settle. You know, it is now time to identify. You know,
Yeah.
I was a bro on campus, campus Christian leader and all of that. So I felt it was not going to be good to leave school without settling that part of the agenda. You know,
Yeah.
and for me, I was looking for a lady who had depth, not much about our charisma as it is our character, our depth of faith, our depth of spirit, you know. And of course, as you would expect, you would find several of those. But for whatever reason, I was being drawn to this lady, you know. I would go, in fact, interestingly, at some point on campus, we just became friends. So we'll have these very long conversations, you know. It was in UI. I would walk her off from the chapel to Idia Hall, you know, whatever, and it was not anything. I mean, it looked like it was just, you know, you just take a stroll. Sometimes you go all that way, sometimes, I mean, and we had very, very, very hearty conversations. So we were very good friends, you know. So when it came time for me to make this choice of who, of course, as you would expect as someone in my kind of situation, I don't want to say position, but it was a situation. There were several, whatever, but I knew it was not a decision I could make with my head, you know. I had to make it with my heart, and I had to trust God to actually lead me to it, you know. So there's a very spiritual dimension to it all, because I kept up the relationship, I kept working at it, and it got to a time when I became persuaded she was the one. I was very persuaded that she was the one. But before I approached her, it will amaze you. I spent 6 months in prayer.
Wow.
Before I approached her. You know, it was very interesting. I mean, I usually go to the chapel every morning, early in the morning, spend a few hours, and I would dedicate just an hour, just praying the Spirit, just pray about this woman, shape her future, shape her destiny, and all that. And she had no clue. In fact, when I would eventually propose to her, she said I was not even in the list of the first 6, you know, that she would have considered. So I guess the prayer saved me from getting the nail, as we used to call it in those days, the 12-inch nail. You know, so it happened that there was a certain day.
Yeah.
I think she was paying for some tests or some exam. So I wrote her a note. A friend of mine was attending our church then, you know, so I wrote her a note. And she replied on the same note through my friend to say, is it "we shall rejoice" or something. Now, the moment I saw that my friend gave me that note about 4 p.m. The moment I saw that note, I said, God, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. That night was the night I proposed to her. It was the night Abacha died. You know, So I did not forget, and it's a very interesting proposal.
Yeah.
I started down. I think I'd gone to a hostel. We walked back to chapel. So we sat on the chapel grounds. And then I said to her, I said, the Lord has asked me to go to Iraq, to go to Sudan, to go to Kenya, to go to Somalia, to carry the word of God to all these dangerous places. And I know that I don't want to go alone. I need someone to go with me who carries the same grace and burden that I have, So will you go with me? Will you? It was funny. I mean, when I think back on it, now, I'm like, who proposes like that? Who tells a woman, I'm going to make your life difficult? Are you ready? So I didn't hear you.
I said, I'm just wondering.
So, so after I did that, she looked at me and said, okay, simplify. What exactly are you talking about? I said, look, I'm talking about a life partner. I'm talking about we having a journey through life together. I'm talking about you. I can't remember whether I used specifically the word be my wife, but, be my life partner. It was very spiritual, And she was like, okay, she'll think about it. She'll pray about it, whatever. And then, interestingly, we changed the topic and we... Right. Yes, and then I had to walk her back to the hostel. There were a lot of whatever that night, people are happy. Abacha had just passed on and all of that. And then I think we're all asked to now leave campus, either that night or the following night, I can't remember. We had to leave campus. So interestingly, some few days after that, or 2 weeks, she was staying on campus with her uncle. We had met, and then she said to me, so what did God say to you? What exactly did God speak? I mean, it was important for us at that season and time, all of us in faith on campus at that time. You couldn't just propose without saying, I have a word from God. Yes, it was important to say, I love you, I like you, you are fine, you are this, you are all that. But it's important to say, I have also spoken to God, and I have God's permission, for this thing. So she said that to me. I said, well, God did not specifically tell me this is my beloved, this in whom I'm well pleased, marry her. I said, but there is a spirit in man, and the inspiration of the Almighty gives him understanding. I know that I know, And then she went, and I think about 2 weeks after that, she came and called me one day after I was just finishing fellowship meeting. She came and called me and said, hey, we need to have a chat. Now, interestingly, I had forgotten that I proposed. Okay? Wow. Because in my mind, it was not possible to have a no. I was speaking to something that was completed, it was sealed, it was... Oh, God. I'm hoping that there will be season 3 and 4 when you get to ask the woman their side of the woman their side of the story, because we need to hear. Yes, we need to hear their side of the story.
I will have to consider that.
Yes. You see, because this thing cannot be one-sided. You see, because if we make it one-sided, it will look too sweet.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. I said my wife will be the one to host that one.
Well, I'm not sure you can even do it. It's okay. The way your style of asking the question is also very interesting. So that night, so she now said, okay, so what you said the other day, can you say it again? What exactly were you saying? So I looked at her and I said, you know what? All I'm saying is, will you marry me? I want you to be my wife. And she looked at me and she said, yes. Oh, from that point on, I was on cloud 9, So that was when, of course, a week after, I had to see a pastor, and then she had to meet my mentors and things like that. Yeah, but I'm sure we'll get on to that word later.
All right, beautiful.
Yeah.
So between the time you proposed and when she said yes was like how many weeks?
About 4 weeks, really.
4 weeks.
It was about 4 weeks, yes.
Okay.
It's up to about 4 weeks. About 4 weeks.
You prayed for 6 months.
Yes.
What was the prayer point?
Well,
In my own case, when I knew my wife,
mm,
you know, I used a lot of dreams and visions. So when I knew I waited for 9 months, but I wasn't praying for 9 months. But I waited for 9 months because I knew it was time to go and ask. So I was praying, but it wasn't like I prayed all through those 9 months. So I waited for 9 months before I eventually asked her out. But let's know, we know those people will know what to pray for.
Yeah. Most of what I was doing was praying the Spirit. I was praying the Spirit most of the time. But I had this sense of shaping the future. One, initially, when I started, it was to be sure this was it.
Okay.
It was to be sure. I mean, I knew in my heart, but I want to be sure I was in line with heaven's agenda. It was very important to me because of my walk with God. I knew what was ahead for me. I knew I couldn't afford to miss it in this specific thing. I knew I had to get it right. So I had to align myself. I had to be very strategic in prayer. So the first few months, really, I was just praying to establish it in my heart.
Yeah.
Then after establishing it in my heart, I began to pray to shape the relationship and the future that will be. So in fact, most of the time I was calling the things that be not as though they were.
Yeah.
You know, I was already looking at children that would be born. Of course, I didn't see those ones accurately because I was seeing boys and girls that time. So I didn't see it accurately. You know, but I was shaping the future. That was what I was doing. I was praying a lot in the Spirit. That was why I got to a point where I had so much conviction that I was not expecting a no. Okay, it was almost to me like, I mean, it's taken for granted. All I just need to do is to speak one way. The other one is guaranteed. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. There's something I'd like you to break down for us.
Okay.
So and understand. A lot of people in this generation don't understand that particular dynamics. Okay. When you pray and you ask God for something or directly, okay, it's not everybody that will hear an audible voice.
Yeah.
Most of the time is that you just know through inner witness. You just know, hey, this is it. So the question is, what is the feeling, or should I use the word feeling? What does one? How are you so sure having not any voice audibly like that? You just know. You just have that assurance that no, this is it. What is that feeling or sensing that yes, God speaking, or no, this is not God? Is there a way to describe that? Okay, when it is God, this is how it is. This is how you feel. This.
Thank you, Emoji. The way we get to understand the voice of God and to know the voice of God, the same way a child gets to know the voice of the parents. Okay. Now, a child is not taught to recognize the voice of the mom or the voice of the dad. The child is just exposed to the voice of the mom and the voice of the dad. Now, as believers, when we're exposed to the atmosphere of God's presence, when we're exposed to the Word of God, we naturally just begin to lean towards His voice. It's not something that I can tell you when He speaks with a bass voice, or He speaks with one high-pitched tone. No. It is something that is within us. It's within you. The same way, if you were to hear the voice of your dad now, you can't mistake it. is the way our spirit man knows the voice of God. Now, there are, of course, things that interfere, there are desires that pull us, there are things that try to cloud that voice. But Jesus was very clear. He said, my sheep hear my voice and they follow me. Jesus said, they do not know the voice of a stranger, so they do not follow the voice of a stranger. So our spirit man knows the voice of the Father. Our spirit man knows the voice of the Spirit. In fact, I usually tell people, when we say we don't know, usually we are confused. And the word confused means two things are coming together. It is because there is a desire within us that is contrary to the desire of the Spirit. That is when we begin to say, I am not sure. But the Spirit that is within us brings clarity. God gives us a lot of clarity. I mean, if you want to speak to Dogza now to get you something from the room, you will not say Dogza, Kabahashta. I don't be like that. What is that? You are going to speak to him in a language he understands. The Holy Spirit will speak to the believer in a language he can understand.
Come on.
So when he's talking to you personally, he speaks in a way you can decode it. There has to be some presence in your life that is able to break down what you're dealing with. So the Holy Spirit will not come and, like you see some prophet will look at you and say, I sense God saying, wear your own shoes. Okay, what is that supposed to mean? If you speak allegories, if you speak enigmas, you have to break it down. If it's not broken down, then I am not dealing with my Father. So you will notice in the Bible, most times God will speak to other people in various ways, but he will speak plainly to his people. When his people went out of the way, he said, I'm going to speak to them by a strange speech. So he was going to use a strange speech because they have left the path. But as long as we're in the path, he speaks to us in a very clear way, in a way we can understand, in a way we can assess. So there is a witness of the Spirit. Usually it's a witness of rest, a witness of peace, or a witness of supernatural excitement when I'm in the right. Okay? When I'm not in the right, it's like a troubling. Sometimes you feel it in your heart, or you feel it in your tummy. It's like something there is just not right. You are just not settled. That is how you know. So my knowing, it was in my heart. And when I felt it in my heart, I prayed and pressed further to establish it, to be sure it was not just my spirit feeling comfortable with something, because that is something most people also don't know. In Ezekiel and Jeremiah, God spoke about a prophet who prophesied of their own spirit. So their own spirit means their own desires. So I can desire something that is not bad, but is not in line with what God desires. So when I declare it, I am not declaring the mind of God. It's a good thing, but it's not the heart of God. So knowing that there were several women, that I could say, will you go with me? I need to know the one that the Lord will have me go with, because it was critical to the assignment he has ahead for me in life. So the witness of peace in my heart let me know this was it. For my wife, it was a different thing. She was just having a chat with her cousin, and because we say, how is that your tall friend? And the next thing she said was, you mean my husband? It just came out like that, something like. So there was just an excitement in her spirit. She was trying to pray about it, but she just found herself just praising God about something, and was wondering, what is it about this thing? So sometimes that is how a thing just comes out of your spirit. Your spirit is already loaded with it. It just flows out.
Wow, awesome.
Yes, sir.
Now, whether we like it or not, we are getting older. In a few years' time, we'll have to attend wedding ceremonies back and forth.
Yes.
In some years now, or than that. This generation, they are very fast. So now, if you are talking to your son, or let's assume, what will you tell them that, look, come, sit down. These are 3 maybe 3 or 4 things you must not negotiate in the choice of the spouse. Either way, go for a man, we go for a woman. Say, look, these 3 things, you must negotiate them. They must be present in the life of your lover, the person you want to be married to. I'm going to talk from the scriptures and also from experience.
Thank you, sir. Beautiful. The first thing is, I'm going to tell my boys, guys, don't be pressured into this thing. You must be ready. You must know it is time for you to step into it. Marriage is honorable. It's a beautiful thing, but you should only get into it when you're ready, when you understand what it is. Some of us went into it without knowing what it was, and we started learning on the job. We did not make life easy for our spouses, you know. When you see marriages that the first 2 years there's a lot of fight, it's because they were not ready. It's as simple as that. Usually you will have a break for about 3 to 4 years, you know, before you start facing any major things. But if you are facing major things from the beginning, you were not ready, you were not prepared, you know. So that is one. 2, I will tell them, whoever it is you are going to go with in life, the most basic qualification is that you must have mutual faith in God. You must both believe in God. You need to have a relationship with God. It can't just be that they like God. I've sat with some of my daughters and say, hey, so is that guy saved? They're like, he loves the Lord. It is not just he loves the Lord. He must have an active living walk with God, because that is the basis for this second thing that will be a requirement. You know, my number 1 was not part of the requirement. So the second thing, the first thing is mutual faith. The second is mutual values. If you don't have the same faith, you cannot have the same set of values. God is our anchor, is our refuge and strength, is our light, is our all in all, is our identity. We have him as an unmovable, unshakable point of reference. So our values are based on who God is and on his interaction with us, or his relationship and covenant with us. So if the person does not believe in your God, the person will not believe in your values. It's as simple as that. I mean, values are not just behaviors. You know how people think, oh, it's because of how they behave. No, people can form, but stress will come to test what has been formed. Circumstance and situation will come to test what has been formed. Your true values define what you will do in situations long before the situations arise. So they determine how you will behave, determine whether you are going to abuse that person and his 10th generation, or you are going to be tender, or you are going to be gentle. And when you're talking of values, you are looking at value for the word of God, value for fellowship with other believers, value for friendships, value for family. It is important. If someone speaks bad of their family, you will not have a good family. If someone does not respect his siblings or respect his parents, he will not respect your parents, and you will not build a home where your children will respect you. You know, so these are things you can see from afar and deal with. You know, so you need to understand their values must align. Their value for family, their value for friendships. You don't get into a relationship with someone who has no friends, or someone who, because you're in a relationship, cuts off all their friends. Those are red flags. Those are things you don't want to do. So you look at how they behave with their friends. Do they have friends that understands their need for space without walking away? You know, like we would say, if like when we're on campus, a guy comes in with a girl, and then the rest of the guys in the room disappear. Those are not good friends. They have set you up for what is bad. So you need, you need the kind of friends who will know that you have come in and they know that you can't afford to be there alone, and even though they have a class, they will start the class to save you. You know, so you need to have those relationships. I mean, and I can't underestimate this. I'm building up my sons to have friends and to have good friends because it's important for life. You know,
Yeah.
you need to have good interaction with family, but you also need to have good friends in your life. It will either make or mar you. It will define how far you go. I mean, if you go far at all, you know. So I would tell them that mutual faith, mutual values, and then I would tell them they need to have mutual interests. Don't marry someone that you have nothing in common, just because they are either fine or because they are spiritual. You know, people marry for some extreme. People marry like, wow, this lady, this guy, the shape is just perfect. You know, some people can also marry like, wow, this guy is spiritual. Ask yourself, what do we do together? What attracts us? What brings us together? For many people, they have nothing bringing them together. They're just winging it, you know. So because of that, the man will come home interacting with newspaper and the TV. The woman is watching what's it called, magic, Africa magic. Whenever yes, they have nothing in common. In fact, some people, the only thing they have in common is church. That is also an issue. It is good that you have church in common because it means you are hearing the same things. It means you are growing together. But you should have things in common beyond that. Okay? Yeah. Like I was telling you, my wife and I were friends. We became friends. So we had conversations that today we ask ourselves, what were we talking about? You know? So we're able to sit and talk about the important things and non-important things. You know, if every time you are with that person, you're always thinking, what am I going to say next? Your mind is working on. No. You shouldn't force it. You should be comfortable having a conversation as much as you're comfortable not saying anything. You're just okay being present. And each other's presence is a present to you. You know? Exactly. And you're just fine with it. So I would tell them, you need to look out for mutual faith, mutual values, mutual interest, and then mutual attraction. The two of you should feel attracted to one another. And I say that with a lot of caution, because there are people who have now taken it to some extreme, you know, and be like, okay, look at Pastor Sophia, she's so fine. Pastor Dunamis speak a very fine wife. Look at Pastor Femi. His wife, Pastor Tolu, is so fine. Look at Pastor Adebayo, his wife is so fine. I must also look for a woman that is very fine.
Fine.
Yes. So there is nothing wrong with marrying fine babes, okay? Yeah. But you see, many of us, when we found ourselves, we were work in progress. We're not fine like that. In fact, I can say for us men, we're not even fine at all. The women were even fine.
No, it's not fine at all.
I've been seeing pictures I don't want anybody to see because the pictures are so scandalous. So when we met ourselves, we were raw materials, but we were willing to work on it. But despite the fact that we're not perfect, in fact, we didn't even know we're not perfect. But it's because of the fact that we were not perfect, we were attracted to one another. We saw value in one another. And I tell people, the container is important, but the content is more important. Because with technology, you can improve on the container. But technology cannot shift content. If it is not present, it is not present. So I would rather go for content and then work on the container than get the container and start looking for content. Yeah.
Wow. Awesome.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Thank you so much. The next question I want to ask you, this kind of scenario, the guy convinced Sister A is going to be my wife. Sister A is convinced Brother B is going to be my husband. Both of them Both of them are children of God. They knew, yes, this is it. But now, there's no parental consent. Either on one side or sometimes on both sides. In fact, sometimes the mom is not born again. She's saying, bring 4 names. And after a few days, taking the 4 names to them, they said, none of these people is your husband. The 2 lovers are convinced. And yet, the parents seems to be at complete loggerheads, and they are even insisting. And sometimes, tribal thing. Some parents will tell themselves, maybe a Yoruba father say, you cannot marry from the east, or it's to say you cannot marry from this, all of that. And the 2 people are convinced. And I've seen 2 people who are in love with each other have to go apart because they refuse. Sometimes God is using the parents to say something. Or what are those 2 people supposed to do? What is the line of action? If they are so confident, the parents are saying, no, you can't do this.
Wonderful, wonderful question, sir. It's a very delicate situation. Of course, we've seen this several times, like you said, in the course of ministry, in the course of counseling. But I always approach it from a very practical perspective, and I'll give you my perspective to it. Number 1 is to pray and ask for God's intervention. Okay? And when you ask for God's intervention, you need to be patient for it. Okay? But should it be taking so long and you both feel, no, this is taking too long, I do not advise people to go ahead, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because it's going to put you on a war path with your families, a family that you are marrying into, or you are being married into. You don't want to have enemies from day one. You don't want to isolate yourselves from day one. Okay? So what I would advise usually is, let's pray for a supernatural intervention. Let's trust God to come in and do something in the hearts of those people. But should the 2 of you get to a point where you're like, you know what, we can't stand this anymore, then I would suggest you walk away. Okay? It's tough, but it is better than putting yourself into a war situation. Because whatever you do, you're going to be fighting battles every day. In some cases, they eventually become friends. But sometimes it's taking a toll on the 2 of you, which is not necessary. That said, you should only try the hard stance if there is a word from God with confirmation. Otherwise, it's just best to just be at peace. That said, there is also another possibility, Pastor Dunamis. It is also possible that when one is convinced, the other person is not convinced. Okay? So we do not have the same level of faith. The fact that we have mutual faith does not mean we have the same level of faith. So someone might say, I want to wait. The other might say, I don't think I can wait. And it is perfectly okay. It is not written in heaven that if you don't marry Sister Jane, that is the end of your life. No. What heaven is concerned about is the content. Container can shift, and you will always find some. Frankly, there are some of us who wanted to marry from other tribes. It was just my preference, for example, to marry from Eastern Nigeria. Okay? But when I met my wife, I was not thinking of the fact that she was from Yoruba land. It was not in my contemplation. In fact, it took me a long while to think of, come to think of it. In fact, one of the day I had the introduction. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
So I was saying the day I actually actively thought about it was our wedding. They're doing the introduction. They will say one family is come from somewhere, the other family is coming from somewhere. But it didn't occur to me really. It was not an issue. What was important to me was that I found someone that I loved. Okay?
Yeah.
And every other consideration was no longer at play. And it's important that we move with that kind of spirit. If, for example, I mean, I had to seek a father's consent, I had to seek my parents' consent. If our families have said no, for example, we would have waited and tarried in prayer. But if they had insisted, we would have backed down. Okay?
Yeah.
And I feel you need to be able to give the other person grace. You need to be able to let them be free to move on if they need to move on. We don't have the same level of resistance. We can't both have the same level of stubbornness. We may both be stubborn, but our stubbornness is not at the same level. Someone can wait 10 years, the other person, 10 months is pushing it. You know?
Yeah.
So if you are both on the same page and say we want to wait, then you wait. And prayerfully trust God to shape the family right. But if that doesn't work, person. I was going to give an example that there are times, for example, when brother A believes sister B is the one, and sister B believes his brother C. Okay, so sister B goes to brother C, and brother A clearly had God tell him, God does not force people to do his will. God will bring a witness when something aligns with his purpose, but it does not mean he cannot find another way for you to break through. So the fact that God spoke to me does not mean he's going to override your will or your own, heart in the matter. So if you don't agree to work with me and you choose to work with someone, God is still able to give both of us great homes, wonderful homes. So if, for example, now back to this case, the couple decides at the end of the day, okay, you know what, we don't want to be fighting battles all our lives. I love you, I know you love me, but let's go our separate ways. It's not as simple as I said it, but it is not too difficult also. When you consider the alternative, when they do that, they can both go on to have wonderful, successful married lives.
Yeah. Awesome.
So that's my perspective.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that contribution. A lot of wisdom there. Let's talk about sexual pressures in this generation. Back while we were on campus growing up, a lot of these things, we don't have these pressures. There were no devices.
Yeah.
Before you can even see pornography, you have to search and search and search for it. If you are really focused on God, you may not even come across pornography.
You won't find it.
But it's a different generation.
Yeah.
It's on Netflix, it's on television, it's in movies. Most movies are not complete until they add some nudity, some vulgar languages, and then they will say plus 18 and all of that. 18 plus. So this generation is intensely pressured. And, in the course of counseling, I discovered that a lot of believers have kind of find a substitution just to pacify their conscience. Some of them will not exactly but they'll go for oral sex. That's the plague of this generation. It doesn't result in pregnancy. We do not have penetration, and all of that. But sin is still sin. So what I want you to talk about is although we have roughly 10, 12 minutes left, but what can we do, maybe from scriptures 1, then 2, practically, looking back at your own experience, how you were able to navigate through that season of your life. What advice can you offer young guys, young ladies, probably who are in a relationship, they are all over themselves? What can they do to manage those sexual pressures?
Thank you. I'm going to examine it from two perspectives, the spiritual and then the very practical. And the practical is also spiritual. Okay. Yeah. The Bible says that where sin doth abound, as sin abounds, grace doth much more abound. Okay. So in our time, there were this evil. They were not just as accessible. In our days, it was really magazines, and the magazines, except your daddy or your uncle or somebody was a perverted person, you are not likely to find them. You
I
know,
don't like
yeah, I don't like it to find them. So apart from people, I mean, I only hear of blue films in those days. I never saw one. There are people who say, "Oh, there's somebody somewhere, somewhere." It was all stories. We never
yeah.
saw it. You know,
But
everything.
I used to think the film come in blue color. That's why they call it blue film.
I I thought the same thing also. And you know, some of us had only black and white TV, so we didn't understand why it was blue. You know, so but it was only from conversations with friends or whatever that we're hearing about some of these perversions. And of course, as teenage came, we were also finding some pressures, you know, and it was still all surrounded by, I mean, all around conversations, you know, that girl, you know, what do you think? Do you think she's nice? You know, whatever. That is what we had, you know. In this dispensation of this generation, it is everywhere. It is in everything. It is whether you're looking for it or not, it is looking for you. It is searching for you. But what I believe is that grace abounds much more
Yeah.
than it did then. So there is more grace to say no. And you see, Titus 2:11, it tells us the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men, teaching us that denying ungodliness, teaching us to deny ungodliness. So within that grace is the capacity to enable us to do what is right. Okay? That grace does not stop you from doing what is wrong, but it enables you to do what is right. It is important that we tell our young people to learn to make right choices, to embrace right choices, to let them know the fact that you feel it does not mean you have to do it. In fact, I remember that was something I got from No More Shit by Juanita Bynum when it came out several years ago. You know, that was one of my nuggets from that book, that the fact that you feel it does not mean you have to do it. But the devil is going to tell you, look, you are feeling it already. You can as well just go all the way and misbehave, you know. So that is one. It is important for us to know grace is available to help us to not do it. I mean, to help us to do what is right. When we choose righteousness, grace activates and enables us to walk in righteousness, enables us to triumph over it. We triumphed over it by grace. You know, it was pure grace. You know, it was not because we didn't want to misbehave. You know, it was the grace of God. But there was another factor, and this is very critical. We need mentors. We need people we are accountable to. We need people who hold us accountable. Pastor means there were days I wanted to misbehave. I felt like I should misbehave. You know, I felt like, Lord, this straight and narrow way is tough. You know, I feared God, but I also feared Mama Hannah Ikime. So when I think of the fact that I have to meet her and tell her what I have done, I borrow myself some sense. So it is important that we have people in our lives who hold us accountable, people we look up to. It is one of the things that this generation is not so strong on, but we must have spiritual figures, we must have authority figures who walk with us, who get into the trenches with us to ensure that we actually live right. They are not afraid to talk to us about it, and they are not afraid to hold us to account. So I knew I feared God, and I knew that God will forgive me if I just say, God, I'm sorry, God, this, God, this. But I also feared a man, should I say a woman. How will I stand before her? Which mouth will I use to say it? So that kept me from misbehaving.
Or your pastor?
Sir?
Was that your mentor or your pastor?
Yes, she was my mentor.
Okay.
She was a spiritual mother. She was the one who raised me up, and she was very active in my life. I mean, all through that time.
Awesome.
Yes, so I had and I still have mentors I'm accountable to, and I have my pastor that I'm accountable to. So I was not just accountable before marriage, I'm still accountable in marriage. Okay? I am still accountable. I am still, when I think of doing something, I'm like, hey, if Victor should hear this one, how will I say it? So I behave myself. It is important. It is important that we have figures in our lives who can call us to order. We should not just go rampant and just misbehave and just feel we are the Lord and masters of our own lives. We are not. We are not Lord and master of our lives. God is still Lord and master, but he has placed people in our lives. That's why it's important. I tell my girls, don't marry a man who does not answer to anybody. And I've also been telling my men, don't marry a woman who does not answer to anybody. It is critical that both of you must have authority figures in your life that you defer to, who hold you accountable, so that when you are going through these pressures, you can deal with it. You see, the power of sin is in secrecy. Once you can expose it, you'll be free from it. You know, you need people in your life who can call you out, call the thing out, and you can open it up, and then you can be fine.
Wow, awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful time. We have about a few minutes left. Can you say something to us? 2 minutes. I know you are a technology enthusiast. All this issue about 5G. Is 5G 6? Is 5G linked to coronavirus? Is 5G dangerous? What exactly is around that 5G issue? Just 2 minutes.
Okay, you see, the main battle of the 5G is an economic war. Unfortunately, a lot of people have been drawn into it. It is the battle of control. Okay, that is why China and the US are in this battle together. Unfortunately, China went ahead of the US in deploying the technology. Okay, so at the root is control, at the root is power. Okay, and there's a lot of money involved in it. Okay, now 5G is a technology.
Okay,
it does not create frequencies, it's using existing frequencies. As you are seated looking at me, you are receiving me from the air around you. See the air around you, there are wavelengths flowing through it. Okay, so my face and my voice that you are hearing is in the air. Okay, so we did not create these wavelengths. We discovered them, and we discovered the ability to manipulate them, to use them.
Okay.
You get the point? The same way we were able to take light, and light is part of the electromagnetic wavelength. Okay, we're able to take light and concentrate it via amplification and use it to read and write CDs. Okay, we use it in our optical mouse. You know, I'm using one here. Using our optical mouse, it's able to do things for us. It's the same way we're able to make use of this, the microwave. It's called, the bandwidth we use is the microwave. Okay, to enhance information, to pass it across. Now, 5G, this is it. It has nothing to do with the Antichrist. And moreover, I tell people we can't stop the Antichrist from coming. Number one. Number two, if you have Christ in your life, you are not the Antichrist candidate. It is not. You are not going to be tricked into accepting the mark. It's a decision you will have to make. Okay. So what 5G does? Let me give you an example. To download an average movie on 3G, maximum spectrum of 3G, the minimum is 2 hours. Minimum on 3G. Okay? It's only about 26 hours on regular speed, but the minimum on maximum speed, or maximum spectrum is 2 hours. For 4G, you will download the same movie in 6.5 minutes. For 4G, maximum, LTE, long-term evolution, full speed. On 5G, is 3.5 seconds.
Are you kidding me?
I'm telling you. 3.5 seconds. It's downloaded. It's done. Now, what it does is that it makes use of, like you have your Wi-Fi modem and all those things around the house. It needs to have proximity because of what we call latency. Now, what we should be worried about is the electromagnetic noise that is created. The same way, if you use your phone at night, you will not be able to sleep well.
That's
Okay? It's the same way these things can create like a cloud around you or noise that prevents you from being at rest, as it were. The same way light excites you. That's why we use a lot of light, you know, in our worship and music and things today, because light excites. So this thing can excite you, but they do not, it cannot cause a virus. It's an electromagnetic wave.
okay.
You know, the virus is microbiology. So you're looking at microbiology and electronics. They are world apart. Do you get the point? So it is not capable of generating COVID or anything. The issue, it was just scam. Unfortunately, people started now distributing the scam all around. 5G is a great technology. It's going to help us to do what we already do, but we do it in a faster way. So, for example, you can have a doctor in India operating on someone in Ibadan. Okay, real time, and it's doing it via is using probes and whatever, and the machine here is responding to him, and it's doing it, and it does it successfully because there is no lag. As you and I are talking now, there is a lag of about 9 seconds.
20 seconds left. We've got to end it.
Okay. All right.
Thank
All
you
right.
so much. I really, really appreciate. Thank you so much. I'll give you a
Great
call.
pleasure, sir. Yes, sir.
All right.
Great pleasure. Praise God.